What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin Jon.
Miller. And we have yet another album review for you. So this time we decided to dive into the underground and go over a debut full-length once again from some absolutely filthy death metal.
Blah.
Because, well, we love that shit.
Yep. Blah.
So we're going to go over, again, the debut full-length from Phobophilic, Enveloping Absurdity. This comes out also on the 16th of September on Prosthetic Records. This band formed in 2016 in Fargo, North Dakota, don't ya know? It's cold there. I've seen it in movies. Now, they have one other EP, which I went over years ago in 2019, which, God, that is years ago now. Undimensioned Identities. Absolutely killer EP. I absolutely loved it. And people have been commenting on that video reminding me that this album is coming out, and I've been absolutely stoked for it because this is some flat out disgusting, but very, I don't know, like cosmic, melodic, technical. There's a lot of things that can use.
Gloomy, dark, filthy, slimy, gooey.
Festering rot.
Yeah.
But, like, hooky and very atmospheric and...
For me, most importantly, musical.
Yeah, right from the rip with the song... I'm going to have to read this because this is such a...
Enantiodromia.
Enantiodromia?
Enantiodromia.
Enantiodromia. It's not a city in North Dakota. I know that much. Right away opens up with just... very sludgy but very clever riffs, and that is a theme that is carried throughout this album.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit, the riff work on here is absolutely fantastic.
The guitars are chugging along on the notes, and the drums, the kick drum was kind of fitting in every other note. It wasn't like dead on the guitars. This is when immediately I grasped on the drums, and there was times when I was listening to this, I kind of droned out of the other things. I had to remind myself that I'm listening to an album and not Vincent Twenton.
It is easy to get lost in this because the riffs kind of like noodle about and they add so much to them. Like, this isn't like, you know,
but they don't really noodle though.
It's crawling, it's slithering, it's doing something slimy.
Crawling earworms.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they do that thing I've talked about before, that just bouncing up and down, the roller coaster effect of riff writing and musical. They ride these low notes and they get these high notes. They keep going back and forth. It's very musically pleasing to hear.
There's a lot of like ascending melodies too, which I thought was really cool. And we're not talking about the first track, but even though the first track definitely embodies a good chunk of what's on here, all across this album, you get kind of lost in these atmospheric riffs. And it's not like lost as in like I'm not even paying attention. Like, no, you are very much paying attention because you're kind of lost in the cosmic spiraling void of this fucking album.
Oh yeah, speaking of riffs, did I mention riffs? Did we mention riffs?
I think we said riffs once or twice.
My favorite track, Cathedrals of Blood, Twilight of the Idols. Cool crawls over a D beat, and then dark, dreary, sour-faced lemons just break down, nasty heaviness. To me, it's like Disma meets Tomb Mold.
I would agree. Actually, there's a lot of stuff that I think sounds very similar to like the Pacific Coast scene, like, you know, Cerebral Rot, Witch Vomit.
Yeah.
It has that sort of like disgusting edge, especially when you consider the gross guitar tone. Like, it sounds like it is dripping with filth, like rotting filth. It's not necessarily like the most brutal tone, but it generates this sort of swampy atmosphere. And when you couple in the deep gurgled vocals that are throughout here, which are pretty much kind of sitting in the back of the mix where, yeah, I think they kind of fit right there because it sounds like a cancerous bullfrog. But it's fucking amazing because they generate this whole sort of just gross atmosphere in its own. Like, it sounds like a demon just fucking reading its diary to you, and it's all awful things that it did.
Reminds me a lot of Mutilatred.
Actually,
Pat
yeah.
from Mutilatred. His vocals kind of sit in the back of the mix like that. Just brutal, gurgled, fucking nasty death metal vocals.
I got a lot of Cerebral Rot on that one too, especially you know when we saw him because he gurgled the names of all the songs.
Yes.
Actually, he gurgled everything. He did not take a break from his death metal. Where's Cerebral Rot?
That's awesome. I applaud that. Even though I don't like gurgle vocals, I applaud that 100%.
Stick to your character.
Oh, dude, it was fun. It was super fun.
Guns. That sounds great.
But yeah, that's pretty much the vocals across the board, and again, they kind of contribute to the swampy but cosmic atmosphere. the whole high and low thing, like you were talking about, like you get a lot of like descending tremolos and death metal, like that sort of thing, like drag you down to the depths. But there's lots of ascending dissonant melodies on here too. So it's down in the grime and the filth of the swamp, which I don't know if there's swamps in Fargo. I've never been there.
I don't think so.
No.
This kind of shoots you up into the fucking cosmos too, amongst all the tentacled beings that clearly live out there.
And going back to the up and down thing with the riffs and the good riff writing and structures and whatnot, that the second song, Those Which Stare Back, that's a good example of that, where they bounce those high and lows and move around so your ear isn't fixated on a lower category of notes all the time, just low key. And also there too, we were talking about the drums and it opened and kind of jammy and spacey atmosphere. There's a part in there, and Those Which Stare Backwards. It's kind of this jam thing going on. I hear, and maybe because you reference like swampy sounding, that I think Louisiana, but I feel in that drumming, he's got a little bit of that Louisiana kind of soul feel, that jazz drum thing to him, that doomy kind of thing, and man, it really fits with the band and their sound and what they got going on.
And the lead work in these songs, the lead on that song especially, is filled with like dive bombs and little squealies. Remind me a lot of Dimebag, to be honest.
Yeah, and this also, like talking about like '90s bands too. This definitely pays homage to a lot of like '90s death metal, like there's
Florida stuff.
Cannibal Corpse sort of chunkiness, but you also have a lot of like incantation and autopsy in here, and that definitely contributes to the filth. But incantation mainly because they do the big incantation, like switch from something fast, blast beats or D beats, fiercely chugging angular riffs, to slowing it down to just a sludgy crawl, which you get right away in the opening track, and in Survive Obscurity, which has just a blood-curdling, disgusting death doom breakdown.
And in that song too, the guitars find a really good spot in the riff writing. And they find those higher notes and those really off moments in the riff very similar. Like it could go way back to like Dave Mustaine and the way he structures his writing, those little like off time nods, those like little beats, and again, it's just written pretty well.
It's very fluid too. Like that's the whole thing I noticed. Like it flows remarkably well. I mean, this fluid is definitely something that came out of like guts and entrails, and it's probably sticky and gooey. But it flows, and I know, it's a little gross, but this is a gross death metal band. So.
Vomit in the skull.
There you go. You have to clean that out, though. That's Miller's.
So going back to that breakdown, it's a good example of what this band does very well, in that they find a pocket to get into that breakdown that is just perfect. It kind of just slides right in there, and it hits so hard.
It kind of plays on the fluidity of this album. We haven't decided what kind of fluid it is yet, but it's definitely gross. But the whole thing is, again, it's very technical, but it's not like wankery. It's not like,
it's
like...
not noodly, it's not like tech death would be. It's technical in the sense that the riffs are very intricate.
Yes.
There's a lot going on in a single riff. A single riff could easily last 2 or 3 measures, and that's pretty spectacular in its own accord, especially for a death metal band, to make a riff that truly lasts a long time.
It still stays rooted to the idea
but still
of the
stays
song.
rooted to the overall pulse of the song.
Reminds me a lot of the band Superstition. They do riff structure like this, where they'll carry on multiple measures, do some off-time stuff, but it's very centered around the riff. But at the same time, they do something that I love on here, and they do lots of harmonies. Like guitar harmonies in here are all over the place, but this isn't necessarily what I would call a very melodic album, but it strangely is.
Yeah.
Like, it's very alluring.
Yeah, it's not melodic in the sense...
Alluring is a
like,
good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, not melodic in the sense like there's a sing-songy part. It's melodic in the sense that these riffs are just constantly ascending and descending, and a constant crawl, and there's little earworms everywhere, and they accent with dissonant notes, and it's just catchy as balls.
It really is.
Man.
It's not sing-songy in the sense of sing. It's sing-songy in the guitars. The guitars are very sing-songy. And it makes for that, like, alluring. That's a very good word to use for it. And heavy. And which is strange to say when we just led this with grossness, just every gross thing you can say. And now we're alluring, captivating.
It's strange. It occupies sort of a weird territory in terms of, like, this is disgusting as hell. Like, it's filthy, almost, cavemanish, except this caveman knows how to write and do math. Like, there's a little bit more, development. It's, past Unga Bunga, there's, but why am I Unga Bungaing?
At first, when I was listening to this, I kind of got into that. I was like, this isn't really doing anything more than what I've heard or whatever. But it just hit on all these old thoughts of music and stuff. And then I started listening to the way, like, the drummer, he does a great job of leading in an idea for the next riff. So he'll have a drum pattern that is fluid, and then he'll accent these parts. And then in the next segment of the song or next riff or measure, whatever you want to use for it,
it incorporates those accents.
The rest of the band comes in and incorporates that. So in the music sonic wall, he's filling these spots in with the toms. He's dropping that spot out with the toms, but the guitars and the bass are filling in. Now he's just riding that kick with all of it, and it really emphasizes those parts, even as caveman as they are.
And I gotta say, the production on here, like, literally, I would compare it to, it's like a live recording, except you drop out all the crowd noise. Like, it sounds like this is 100% what you get live. It's mixed well. The album doesn't sound muddy at all. Like, all the instruments come out clearly.
It's clear. There's not a lot of reverb going on. They don't hide a lot of things. Like, each of the instruments stand out and play their parts, and you can hear them all. It even gets a little bit like horror synthy. There's the interlude in here, Individuation.
Love it.
Oh, it's great.
Because normally, Nick and I both bitch about interludes. Like, come on.
No, that's
But this
ridiculous.
is, you get horror synths. It's like a John Carpenter style horror movie.
Fulci.
And then you get piano and like tribal percussion and like clean guitars. It's like a Soulfly jam.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Yep.
It's almost like horror desert rock. Like, the zombies are coming out of the sand instead of the swamp this time. Are there deserts in Fargo? There's not deserts in Fargo. I don't know what goes on in Fargo. There's death metal in Fargo.
We've
I
never
know
been
that.
to Fargo.
I hear it's cold.
And coming out of that interlude, going back to their ability to write things well and plan things out, and also what we get on is the feel of an album and flow. They come out of that interlude and they flow into the next song, and it takes them a couple measures to get back into it, back into what you've heard in the brutality, but it flows and they do it really well, and it doesn't seem rushed or abrupt. So hats off, guys, you did the interlude and correctly.
Dude, the illusion of self too, the song that Individuation goes into, one of the best songs on the album.
Yep.
I absolutely love the more spacey, cosmic vibe.
Reminds me a lot of Mastodon.
It really does. Like, if Mastodon decided to go full bore death metal, I'm not saying that's probably like the best career move for him, but I would still be behind it. It really has that vibe. It has those like crawling, like atonal kind of distant riffs like you'd hear in a song like Megalon. And despite being like very, again, technical, they hang on to measures for a while. Like, they dry hump a good riff for a while, and they don't just immediately transition into something.
Not afraid of it.
Yeah.
Not
just
afraid of
stick with it, or add something to it, like a really cool, like dreary lead.
Which they do. They build nicely. They build tension all across this album, but even building on the riffs themselves.
It flows like a river of mucus and pus. It's amazing. As for any negatives about this, like me personally, there really isn't much that I don't like on here. Like, I mean, sometimes you can kind of get lost in some of the noodling, but it always finds a way to bring you back. So, not really a complaint there. It all sounds really fucking good.
The only negative I have is that there's only 36 minutes of it. Why aren't there 45 minutes?
I mean, I could have done with even more.
I could easily take another song or two.
I only have like nitpicky stuff. The guitars, I think if there was a little bit more mid-range, I'm not talking high-end sizzle, a little more of that mid-range crunch to it, it would fill out the lower chugs more. It would just kick them a little bit, tweak them a little bit, and punch through, make more of an impact, and make it heavier. You don't always have to go lower to get heavy.
I don't know, like, for me, it sounds like they were kind of trying to do, like, again, that kind of swampy, disgusting death metal, which, I mean, you can do with more, like, crunch the guitars, but I don't know.
We're talking about a lot.
Yeah, not a lot, like, just enough, like, it's very, like, similar to, like, Cerebral Rot or, Incantation, but Incantation knows how to bring some crunch to it.
Just a hair of the C word.
Crunch.
Obviously not.
Definitely not cunt. Yeah, but overall, our complaints as a whole were very minimal, and I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and give this 4.5 stars. I really dig this. And I kind of knew I would because the singles were really good, but the whole album, like, there's other songs that I think that are even better than the singles, and the singles were all awesome. This album flows remarkably well. It's very hooky. It's very cerebral, too, for as just, like, disgustingly heavy and brooding as it can be.
Yep.
I love the songwriting. The riff work is fucking legendary on here. This is a band to fucking watch in terms of death metal. There is just amazing songwriting across the board. I love the atmosphere and production. Like, they pretty much checked off every box I like, and it sounds disgusting, too, at the same time. Bravo, guys. If you have not heard this band before, go out and get this one. Check out their Undimensioned Identities EP, too. That's also really awesome. Someone else say something positive about this band, either one of you two.
I got you. It's also a 4.5 for me. I knew it almost immediately. I actually, while these guys reviewed another album, I was upstairs jamming this record. I jammed it 3 times in a row because it was fucking awesome, and it kept getting better every time I listened to it. It never loses your attention. There are constant earworms everywhere. Even the interlude is still pretty. We didn't even touch on that. There's a couple songs that are downright beautiful. You go from nasty to beautiful. I haven't heard something like this in quite some time. Again, captivating is a word. Disgustingly brutal and nasty and filthy and slimy. Those are also words. But it's
dripping with beauty.
Yep, but it's all of what this record touches upon. Again, my only gripe is it's not longer. The 36 minutes and some change that it is worth every goddamn minute of your time. Please go out and listen to this. Do yourselves a fucking favor.
Well, I give it a 4.5 out of 5, and I mean, they just said everything. So,
whoops.
But yeah, this band is definitely on their way, and I dig some of the ideas they had with the jams, the cool little segments there,
Yep.
and the drummer Vincent really reminded me of it really seems like he's got like that soul jazz Louisiana southern kind of vibe to what he's doing. Like, he does a good job of like having that jam feel, but I think there's room for those little drags or those little like breaks in the pattern, and then, you know, off time little rolls or whatever. Look up Stan Moore and you'll know what I'm talking about. But everything else is fantastic about this album. The guitar work is great, the drums are great, and honestly, Aaron, I'm sorry, man, I owe you a beer because I wrote down toward the end of the album, I was like, is at this point, I realized I've paid zero attention to the vocals. I owe you a beer, man.
Cancerous Bullfrog.
I'm sure he's fucking
It's amazing.
Guy. These guys, to write music like this, you got to be fucking awesome dudes, I think.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. There's a link to our Patreon there, and while you're at thrallsmetal.com, you can check out our shirts. We will have some new merch here
Hats.
relatively soon, like that. Still not sure if we're doing grenades. I think we're doing grenades. I think we should do grenades. I'm going to keep pushing for grenades because safety third.
I ain't shipping out grenades. You guys got to take care of that shit.
Duh, you throw them.
I can throw them.
As for other stuff for the channel, Pantera ranking is done. It will probably premiere on Wednesday, and plenty of reviews coming because this month is absolutely fucking steeped in releases.
And then we prep for the Mastodon ranking, which is going to be fucking awesome to do.
Oh my God, there's so much coming your way.
I'm excited.
And of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that stuff.
Thank you.
It's absolutely amazing that this channel is doing as well as it is. It's, you know, a kind of a dream come true. A dream that I didn't know I had, but
no shit.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome. And you guys are the fucking reason. So once again, thank you because you all fucking rule. And we will catch you later.